I used to believe that being a good father meant one thing: making sure your child never had to worry about money. Ava never went without anything. She had the best clothes, the newest school supplies, expensive birthday presents, and eventually a college fund that could cover almost anything she wanted. What I didn't give her was something money couldn't buy: me. My name is Thomas Bennett, and for most of my daughter's childhood, I was physically present in the world but absent from hers. I didn't realize that until it was too late. When Ava was 6 years old, I worked 12-hour days at a financial firm. When she was 8, I started traveling for work. By the time she was 10, I was spending more nights in hotels than at home. Whenever my wife, Rachel, complained, I always had the same answer: I'm doing this for Ava. And technically I was. I wanted to build a life where my daughter would never struggle the way I had growing up. My father, Richard, had worked constantly. He taught me that success didn't come from wishing. It came from sacrificing. So I sacrificed. Weekends, birthdays, school events, family dinners. I told myself I would make it up to Ava later. That word became my favorite excuse. Later. I'll be there later. We'll spend time together later. I'll take you on that trip later. I'll come to your recital next time. There was always a next time. Until one afternoon, when there wasn't. I remember the day because Rachel called me while I was sitting in a conference room with Stephen Parker, my boss. Thomas, Ava's school play is tonight. I looked at the clock. 5:18 p.m. The play started at 6. I know, I said. Are you coming? I glanced at the presentation on the screen. Stephen was waiting for me to finish discussing a major client. I might be late. Rachel went silent. Then she asked quietly, Are you going to come at all? I sighed. I'll try. She hung up. I finished the meeting. By the time I got home, it was almost 9. Ava was already asleep. Her costume was hanging on the back of a chair. I stood in the doorway of her bedroom and watched her sleep. For a moment, guilt hit me. Then my phone buzzed. A client needed something urgently. I walked away. I didn't know it then, but that night was one of the last times my daughter would expect me to show up. Years passed. Ava stopped asking. That should have scared me. Instead, I thought she had become independent. When she turned 16, she stopped telling me about school. When she turned 18, she stopped asking for my opinion. When she went to college, she rarely called. I blamed her. I told myself teenagers changed. Young adults became busy. Life moved forward. Then, on a cold Saturday morning when Ava was 22, I received a message from her. It contained only one sentence. Dad, we need to talk. I stared at those words for several minutes. I called her. She didn't answer. I texted back. Of course. What's wrong? Her reply came almost an hour later. Nothing is wrong. I just think you should finally hear the truth. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But a few days later, I sat across from my daughter in a small coffee shop, and for the first time in my life, I realized that the little girl I had spent 22 years trying to provide for had stopped needing my money a long time ago. What she had needed was something I could never go back and give her. And what she told me next would make me wish I could turn back the clock. Ava was already sitting in the corner of the coffee shop when I arrived. She was 22, but for some reason, when I looked at her that morning, I could still see the little girl who used to run toward the front door whenever she heard my car. Except she didn't run toward me anymore. She barely looked up. Hi, Dad. Hi, sweetheart. I sat across from her. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. I tried to smile. So, what's going on? Ava wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I don't know how to say this. Just say it. She looked at me. Do you remember my 8th birthday? I frowned. Of course. She gave me a small, almost sad smile. No, you don't. I felt my stomach tighten. Why would you say that? Because you weren't there. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She continued. You promised you'd be there. Mom told me you had an important meeting, but you'd come right after. I remembered something. A business trip. A client. A hotel. I was working, I said quietly. I know. There was no anger in her voice. That somehow made it worse. I knew you were working, she said. That's what I always knew. I looked down at the table. Ava, I was trying to give you a good life. I know. Again, those words. I know you paid for everything. I know you worked hard. I know you thought you were doing the right thing. She paused. But you never understood what I actually wanted. I swallowed. What did you want? She looked directly into my eyes. You. That single word hit harder than any accusation could have. Ava looked down again. When I was little, I used to sit by the window waiting for your car. I felt my chest tighten. I'd hear a car outside and run to the window. Sometimes it wasn't you. She laughed quietly, but there was no happiness in it. Eventually, I stopped running. I couldn't speak. She continued. Do you remember my first soccer game? I shook my head. No. She nodded. Exactly. I probably had a meeting. You did. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She showed me an old photograph. A little girl stood on a soccer field wearing a blue uniform. She was smiling. Beside her was Rachel, and behind them were several parents sitting in folding chairs. I wasn't there. I kept looking at the stands, Ava said. Mom told me you were working. She locked her phone. After the game, I asked her if you were proud of me. I looked at her. What did she say? She said you were. My throat tightened, but I wanted you to tell me. I stared at my daughter. For 22 years, I had measured my love in numbers. Tuition, bills, vacations, savings. I had convinced myself those things proved I cared. But sitting across from Ava, I finally understood something. A child doesn't measure love by how much money you spend. They measure it by whether you show up. I can't change the past, I whispered. No. Her voice was soft. But you can stop pretending it didn't happen. I nodded. Then Ava said something that made my heart drop. There was one day, Dad, when I stopped waiting for you completely. When she looked at me. My high school graduation. I remembered it immediately. I'd been in New York for a major business deal. I'd sent her flowers. I had even transferred money into her account as a graduation gift. At the time, I thought I'd handled everything perfectly. Ava stared at me. Do you know what I did after graduation? I shook my head. She took a breath. I went home, went into my bedroom, and cried. Then she added quietly, not because you weren't there. She paused. Because by then, I already knew you weren't coming. I didn't know what to say. There are moments in life when an apology feels almost insulting because it is far too small compared to the damage you've caused. That was one of those moments. Ava sat across from me, staring at her coffee. I wanted to reach across the table and take her hand, but I didn't. Somehow, I felt like I had lost the right. I'm sorry, I finally said. Ava nodded. I know you are. Then what can I do? She looked at me. That's the problem, Dad. You always ask what you can do. I frowned. What do you mean? You think everything can be fixed by doing something. Her words made me uncomfortable because they were true. If I needed money, you gave me money. If I needed something expensive, you bought it. If I needed help with college, you paid for it. She leaned back. But when I needed you to sit beside me, you weren't there. I lowered my eyes. I thought providing for you was being a good father. I know. Why didn't you tell me? She looked genuinely surprised. I did. I looked up. When? All the time. I shook my head. I don't remember. Exactly. She reached for her phone again. This time, she opened a series of old messages. I recognized my own name at the top. There were messages from years ago. Dad, can you come to my recital tomorrow? My response. Sorry, sweetheart. Work emergency. I'll make it up to you. Another. Dad, can we have dinner tonight? My response. Not tonight. Big meeting tomorrow. Another. Dad, I got an A on my math test. My response. That's great. I'm proud of you. I stared at the screen. Ava had sent me dozens of messages. I had answered almost all of them, but most of my replies were short. Busy. Later. Tomorrow. Proud of you. Love you. Words without time behind them. I kept all of them. Ava said. Why? Because when I was little, I thought you'd eventually notice. I felt something break inside me. Notice what? That I wasn't asking for money. She put the phone down. I just wanted my dad. I covered my face with one hand. For years, I had been proud of the fact that Ava never needed anything. Now I realized that I had trained her not to need me. She became independent because she learned I couldn't be depended on. I hate that I did this to you, I said. Ava was quiet. I don't hate you. I looked at her. I thought you did. No. She shook her head. I spent years trying to hate you. It would have been easier. That sentence stayed with me. Then why didn't you? Because you weren't a bad person. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You were just never there. I didn't know whether that made me feel better or worse. Probably worse. Ava took a deep breath. There's something else. My heart sank. What? She hesitated. Do you remember when I got accepted into college? Of course. I remembered that day. She had called me. I had been in a meeting, but I answered because I saw her name. She was crying. I assumed she was excited. Now I realized there had been something I hadn't asked. Do you remember what I said to you? I thought about it. You said you were proud of me. No. She shook her head. I said, Dad, I wish you were here. I froze. I suddenly remembered. Her voice on the phone. The silence afterward. And my own response. I'll fly out next month. I promise. I never did. Ava looked at me. That's when I stopped believing your promises. Then she stood up. I need to go. I wanted to stop her. Instead, I asked the only thing I could think of. Is there any chance? She paused. Chance for what? For me to be your dad again. Ava stared at me for several seconds. Then she quietly said, maybe. She walked away. And for the first time in 22 years, I didn't know what I could buy to make things right. Because the one thing my daughter wanted from me couldn't be purchased. It had to be earned. And I had no idea where to begin. For the next few weeks, I didn't know what to do. My old instinct was to fix everything immediately. I almost bought Ava a car. Then I stopped myself. That wasn't what she needed. So I tried something completely different. I asked her if she wanted to have dinner with me. She replied 3 hours later. Okay, Friday. I arrived early. Ava arrived exactly on time. We ate at a small restaurant, and I made myself follow one rule. I wouldn't talk about work. I wouldn't offer money. I wouldn't make promises. I would simply listen. For almost an hour, Ava told me about college, her job, her friends, and things I had never known about her life. Then she suddenly smiled. You know what's strange? What? You actually listen now. I smiled sadly. I'm trying. She nodded. I noticed. That small sentence meant more to me than any business award I'd ever received. Over the next month, we met several times. Sometimes we had dinner. Sometimes we walked around the city. Once, she invited me to her apartment. I noticed a box of old childhood things on a shelf. What's that? She opened it. Inside were photographs, school certificates, and drawings. Then I saw something that stopped me. A handmade Father's Day card. My name was written across the front in crooked, colorful letters. I picked it up carefully. Did you make this? I was 7. I opened it. Inside were the words. My daddy is my favorite person. I wish he was home more. I couldn't hold back my tears. Ava looked away. I kept it because I didn't want to forget that I used to believe you'd come home. I closed my eyes. That night, I finally understood that rebuilding our relationship wasn't about convincing Ava that I loved her. She already knew. It was about proving that love could finally look different. A few weeks later, Ava called me unexpectedly. Dad, are you busy? I looked at my calendar. Normally, the answer would have been yes. This time I closed my laptop. No. What's wrong? Nothing. I just wanted to ask you something. Anything. She hesitated. Would you like to meet someone? My heart skipped. Who? My son. I was speechless. You have a son? She laughed softly. Yes, Dad. His name is Ethan. He's 8. 8. My daughter had a child, and I hadn't even known. The realization hurt more than I expected. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if you wanted to be involved. I swallowed. I do. She was quiet. Then come over tomorrow. The next afternoon, I stood outside Ava's apartment, nervous like a teenager. She opened the door. A little boy was sitting on the floor building something with blocks. This is my dad, Ava said. Ethan looked up. Hi. Hi, buddy. He smiled. Then he asked the question that nearly destroyed me. Are you going to stay? I looked at Ava. She didn't say anything. So I knelt beside him. Yes. Ethan smiled and returned to his blocks. I stayed for 3 hours. We built a crooked tower, ate pizza, and watched an animated movie. When I finally left, Ava walked me to the door. You know, she said, he really likes you. I smiled. I really like him too. She nodded. Then she added quietly, just don't disappear. I looked into my daughter's eyes. I won't. This time, I didn't make it a promise. I made it a decision. And for the first time in my life, I understood that being a father wasn't something you finished when your child became an adult. It was something you chose to be every single day. After meeting Ethan, something inside me changed. Before that day, I had been trying to repair my relationship with Ava. After that day, I realized I had another chance. Not to replace the childhood I had missed. I could never do that. But I could make sure Ethan never wondered whether his grandfather would show up. I started making small changes. I left work earlier. I stopped answering emails during dinner. I turned down unnecessary business trips. Stephen noticed immediately. Thomas, what's happening to you? I'm making time for my family. He laughed. Since when? Since I realized I almost lost them. He didn't know what to say. For years, I had measured success by money, promotions, and bigger accounts. Now I measured it differently. I counted dinners with Ava, afternoons with Ethan, phone calls, simple conversations. One Saturday, Ava called me. Dad, Ethan has a school event next Friday. What's the time? 6. I'll be there. She went silent. Then she asked, Really? Really? That question hurt. She had heard me make promises so many times that even a simple yes sounded unbelievable. Friday came. At 5:15, I was already sitting in my car outside the school. I didn't care that I was early. I wanted to be certain. Inside the gym, parents were finding seats. Then I saw Ava. She looked surprised when she noticed me. You actually came. I smiled. I told you I would. She walked over and hugged me. It was the first time Ava had hugged me without hesitation in years. Ethan's performance lasted only 20 minutes. He played a small part in a school play, but when he looked into the audience and saw me, his face lit up. Afterward, he ran toward me. Grandpa, you came. I laughed. Of course I came. Ava stood behind him, watching us. I saw tears in her eyes. Later, while we were walking to the car, she said something that stayed with me. You know, Dad, when I was little, I used to imagine what it would feel like if you actually came. I stopped walking. And she smiled. It's not exactly how I imagined it. Why? Because now I'm an adult. I looked down. I know. She took my arm. But maybe that's okay. We continued walking. For the first time, I wasn't trying to get my old life back. I was building a new one. A few months passed. Our relationship became easier. Ava started calling me without a reason. Sometimes she sent pictures of Ethan. Sometimes we simply talked. One evening, she called me late. Her voice sounded different. Dad, are you sitting down? Yes. There's something I never told you. My heart sank. What is it? She was silent for several seconds. Then she said, I didn't stop waiting for you because I stopped loving you. She took a shaky breath. I stopped waiting because I thought you had already chosen a life without me. I closed my eyes. That sentence hurt more than anything she had said before. But I knew she wasn't finished. And what she told me next would finally explain why my absence had affected her far more deeply than I had ever understood. Ava, I whispered, what do you mean? She didn't answer immediately. Then she said, Do you remember when I was 13? I thought for a moment. Yes. You probably don't remember what happened. I stayed silent. I had a really bad day at school. She explained that some girls had been making fun of her for months. One afternoon, she came home crying. She had wanted to call me. She actually picked up the phone. But then she remembered all the times I had been too busy. So she put it down. I sat on my bedroom floor, she said. And I kept thinking, Dad wouldn't understand anyway. My chest tightened. I was your father. You could have told me. I know. Her voice cracked. But that's exactly what I couldn't understand. You were my father, but I didn't know how to reach you. I couldn't speak. She continued. Mom tried. She sat with me. She helped me. But I wanted you. I wiped my eyes. Why didn't anyone tell me? Mom did. I froze. What? She told you. I remembered. Rachel had once called me during a business trip. She had said Ava was struggling. I had told her I'd call when I got back. I never did. I had forgotten. Ava hadn't. That's when I learned something, she said. What? That I couldn't depend on you when life got hard. I felt tears running down my face. I'm sorry. I know. Then she said something unexpected. I don't want you to spend the rest of your life hating yourself. I looked up. What? You can't change what happened. But I should have been there. Yes. Her honesty hurt. But I don't want revenge, Dad. I never did. Then what do you want? She was quiet. I want you to understand. Understand what? What your absence taught me. My heart sank. What did it teach you? She answered slowly. It taught me that people can love you and still leave you feeling alone. I closed my eyes. That sentence destroyed me, because I realized that was exactly what I had done. I had loved my daughter, but I had made her feel alone. Ava began crying. So when you started showing up for Ethan, I was scared. Scared of what? That you'd disappear again. I promised her I wouldn't. But this time, I understood that promises weren't enough. I had to prove it. Every day. For the rest of my life. A few days later, I received a message from Ava. Dad, Ethan wants to ask you something. Then another message arrived. He wants to know if you'll come to his birthday. I smiled through my tears. I typed back immediately. I'll be there. This time, there was no hesitation. No meeting. No excuse. No later. Just me. Showing up. Ethan's birthday was on a Sunday. I arrived an hour early. I brought him a small gift, but more importantly, I brought myself. Ava opened the door and smiled. You're early. I know. She laughed. You're never early. I am now. Ethan ran toward me. Grandpa. He hugged me tightly. I hugged him back. As I watched him open his presents, I realized something. I couldn't give Ava her childhood back. I couldn't attend the soccer games I missed. I couldn't sit beside her at the school play. I couldn't erase the nights she waited by the window. But I could stop adding to those memories. After everyone left, Ava and I sat outside. For a while, we said nothing. Then she looked at me. I think I finally understand something. What? You really did love me. I smiled sadly. I always did. I know. She looked down. But I also understand that love isn't enough if you never show up. I nodded. You're right. She leaned against my shoulder. I froze for a second. Then I gently put my arm around her. I wish I could go back, I whispered. So do I. We sat there quietly. Then Ava smiled. But maybe we don't have to keep living in the past. I looked at her. Does that mean you forgive me? She thought about it. Some days I do. I smiled. And other days? Other days I'm still angry. I nodded. That's fair. She laughed. You're not going to try to fix it? No. Good. She rested her head against my shoulder again. For years, I had believed that being a father meant providing a better future. Now I understood. A child doesn't remember the money. They remember the empty chair. They remember the missed phone call. They remember looking into the crowd and not seeing you. They remember promises that never happened. But they also remember when you finally show up. I missed my daughter's childhood. That will always be my greatest regret. But Ava taught me something I will carry for the rest of my life. You don't get a second chance to raise your child. But sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a chance to become their father again. Not through money. Not through promises. Through time. Through presence. Through showing up. Every single time. And when I look at Ava now, I don't see the little girl I failed anymore. I see the woman who gave me another chance. And I know I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never has to wonder again whether her father will be there. Because now, when she calls, I answer. And when she asks me to come, I go. No matter what.